welcome back to the Apologetics.com radio show. We are joined by Dr. Faz Rana. He is a great addition to our show this evening.
My question to him would be, I'm an atheist. Why can't, maybe you'll agree with me, I don't know, but why can't I don't know be good enough as far as how everything came to be? Why can't I don't know? We say I don't know all the time to our kids, to our wives, to people. Why leap into the unknown with it and postulate a being that no one can even prove ever existed? Why not just leave it as I don't know and let's try to figure it out, instead of leaping into the unknown and saying I'm going to postulate a being that no one can prove, but that being is real and this is what created it? So that's my question.
It's a great question, and I think, if I'm understanding your question correctly, to me, the idea of saying I don't know is a very unsatisfying answer. And so I think we all are compelled to try to figure things out when it comes to questions pertaining to origins. I mean, even whether one is an atheist or one is a believer, I think there's, again, this compulsion to try to press the frontiers of knowledge as far as we can to try to understand questions of origins. It's fascinating to me how much work astronomers place into trying to understand the beginning of the universe. And that's a place where, to say you don't know is, probably a very realistic response to how the universe came into existence. Now, to me, I think it's reasonable to say, when it comes to, let's say, the origin of life, it's either the outworking of undirected processes or there's a mind behind it. Those seems to me to be two of the most reasonable possibilities. And so then the question becomes, well, what it seems to be the best explanation? Maybe we can't answer the question with certainty, but we can at least give a proposal of what we think is going on based on all the data that we have. We can reason to the best explanation and hold to that provisional. Again, a man-made design in biochemical designs is rather provocative and suggests that this is the work of a mind. It really does look like there's a mind involved, because there's not a scientific explanation that's even close to being robust for how life originates. And when you see that fingerprint that reflects design, again, in biochemical systems, I think that it's reasonable to conclude a creator. And then you couple that with the fact that the universe displays fine-tuning with respect to its fundamental constants. That is a requirement for life to be possible in the universe. You look at the idea that the universe has a beginning, and so this evokes the cosmological argument for God's existence. You've got at least a rational case to say that it looks as if there's a mind behind everything. And once you reach that point, I think you really should be asking other questions, such as who is that mind potentially, and how would I relate to that creator, if indeed that creator was responsible for everything? I think those are questions that you cannot ignore once you even have a semblance of evidence that it looks like there very well could be a mind behind everything.
Okay, as an atheist, when you say mind, you mean disembodied mind, am I correct?
What I mean is the creator as described in the Bible.
Okay, that would be a mind with no physical attributes, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay, as an atheist, that goes against the reality of human life. As you know, as a scientist, any scientist would tell you in the world they've never seen a mind without a brain. So even to postulate a mind still would be going into almost never ever land, going into a place that any scientist like, we've never seen or mathematically proven a mind that exists without a physical brain. So wouldn't you still be stuck in postulating something that would be more whimsical rather than something that you can actually base your life on?
Well, I think what you may be doing there is making a category error. That what you're assuming is that just because our experience is that, the only minds that we're familiar with are integrally interwoven with bodies, that the mind that brought the universe into existence must be identical to us. That to me seems like a category error, and I think it's dangerous to rely on our common everyday experience when we start drawing conclusions as to what may be the fundamental nature of reality. A really good example that is, again, from the realm of science would have to do with quantum mechanics. The behavior of subatomic particles is completely counterintuitive compared to our common experience for how things behave at a macroscopic level. And in fact, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to actually envision what's happening at the quantum realm. And when I was taking quantum mechanics, I struggled with it initially because I tried to relate what I was learning about how the subatomic realm behaved to what I was familiar with in the macroscopic realm. And it wasn't until I just simply gave up and said, I just accept that this is the nature of reality at the subatomic level, that quantum mechanics suddenly began to click for me. But my point is that scientifically, here's an example of what we experience in common everyday life has no bearing on the actual nature of reality. So just because you think that a mind has to be, integrally interlinked to a body based on our common experience doesn't mean that the mind that brought the universe into existence could be something other than a mind associated with the physical body. That's a category error, and one doesn't necessarily follow from the other. I don't know, the answer, but we could say that it sure does seem like there very well could be a mind behind everything.
One last question, and I'll let you guys go. I just want to ask you, can you prove that a disembodied mind exists, or do you have to admit yourself that, no, I cannot prove this, I'm postulating a concept? So that's all I want to ask, and I'll let you guys go. So can you prove this disembodied mind mathematically or empirically, or are you yourself still stuck in, this is just a concept, a belief, but I cannot prove it?
I appreciate your questions. These are very good questions and thoughtful questions. So thank you for asking them.
Folks, that was Faz Rana once again, one of the greatest scientists in Christendom. Very nice guy. It was an enjoyable conversation between me, Brett Strong, and Faz Rana. But notice, he gave zero evidence for the Christian God. Zero. Nothing. He just kept retreating back into his imagination.
I don't know, the answer, but we could say that it sure does seem like there very well could be a mind behind everything.
Postulating his ideals. Ultimately, all Faz Rana was doing was God of the gaps. When you boil it down, Faz Rana was like, who created the universe? God of the gaps, Christian God. And that God of the gaps is the Christian God to Faz Rana. Fine-tuning, God of the gaps, Christian God. He's just depositing his Christian God blindly. He's just imagining the Christian God did all this. And that's okay, folks, to imagine. Because one can easily imagine, as people have done in history, like, hey, Zeus created all there is. Zeus, being God of the gods, created all there is. Thor was a creator of some level. Jupiter, God. The American Indian say the Great Spirit God created everything. Hinduism say Brahma or Vishnu or 300 million other gods are involved and created everything that is 300 million, over 300 million gods. There's countless African gods they would postulate and say, hey man, the African God did all this. Matter of fact, you can make up any all-powerful God you want, any immaterial all-powerful God, and posit that as Faz Rana did. God of the gaps. What God? It could be a billion different gods because all these gods are imaginary. And so that's what Faz Rana is doing. He's just imagining the Christian God did it. The creator of the universe. Creator of design. All Faz Rana can do with all his scientific greatness was retreat back to his imaginary realm when I, Brett Strong, pushed him softly to the wall. Said, hey, I flat out told him, ultimately, you can't prove it. You're depositing this God of yours. This imaginary God you're depositing.
I don't know, the answer, but we could say that it sure does seem like there very well could be a mind behind everything.
I mean, no scientist was like, yeah, well, we know for a fact that there are disembodied minds. So for him to even deposit a disembodied mind is imaginary. You can't prove it. Yeah, they say, well, just because we never seen it doesn't mean it's not real. Well, if Faz Rana really believed that, then he would have to be a pluralist when it comes to God. He would have to be open to every religion, and he could not be dogmatic. If Faz Rana really believed what he said in that manner, just because you can't prove it empirically doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Then you have to. He couldn't stand on the Christian God. He would have to say, "Well, I believe the Christian God exists, but then again, all gods could exist, so therefore, I'm a pluralist ultimately." See, Faz Rana doesn't buy what he preaches. Just because you can't prove it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. He doesn't buy that. That's just a cop out. Nice guy, Faz Rana, but he's copping out. But anyways, notice that he gave zero evidence for the Christian God. Zero. You know why? Because the Christian God doesn't exist. The Christian God is a fictional character in the ancient comic book called the Bible. Old Testament and New Testament. Yeah, the Old Testament God in the Bible is a fictional character, and his superhero son in the New Testament, Jesus, is a fictional character too. Thus, there's no evidence for the Christian God. Because if you read the Bible, there is all kind of empirical evidence. Old Testament God gave all kind of empirical evidence. He gave empirical evidence to two nations at one time, Israel and Egypt, in the storybook Bible. He gave empirical evidence to two nations, Egypt and Israel, simultaneously, again and again and again and again, to prove his existence. He did it empirically. But in reality, nothing. Nothing. Ask any Christian and prove your God empirically exists. Nothing. You see, I asked, Faz Rana, one of the greatest scientists in Christendom today. Brett Strong softly challenged him, respectfully challenged him, and Faz Rana came out with a big fat blank. Zero evidence for the Christian God. All Faz Rana was doing was postulating and hiding behind philosophy. But when it came to evidence, he gave zero. So this is the big gap. Old Testament God, billions and billions of empirical evidence. In the comic book, storybook, Bible. But reality, zero. So, the Bible, billions and billions of empirical evidence for the Christian God. Reality, zero. You see, it's Christian God does not exist. That's why Faz Rana, the greatest scientist in Christendom, one of the greatest scientists in Christendom, Hugh Ross, all of them. Take the greatest scientists in Christendom today, Hugh Ross, Dr. Faz Rana, all of them. Put them in a room and said, empirically improve, or scientifically improve, or experimentally prove, or mathematically prove your God exists. Nothing. So I'm going to end it right here, but think about it, folks. Take Faz Rana, Hugh Ross, all the great scientists in the world who are confessed Christians, put them in a room and give them these options. Like, can you prove your God experimentally, empirically, mathematically? And you will hear a total silence. And let that silence from all the great scientists in Christendom, let that silence show you the Christian God is fiction.